Skep Tock. And with me, I have Minions Prospero,
Hello.
Sora Luna,
Good evening.
Blind Press,
Hi.
Geodes,
Hello.
the Harry Channel.
Good evening.
And we may or may not be joined by Jenna later on. So we'll just play that one by ear. And I don't even know how that expression really got started. I can't imagine playing anything within the ear. But Prospero, how was your day today?
It was fine, thank you. Had a meeting midday. We had the furnace guy come and check why we had gotten a critical error and our air conditioner had shut down.
Oh.
And yeah, the compressor has gone bad on a relatively new air conditioner.
Lovely.
Oh, good.
Yeah, the motor has gone to
But
the great.
it's covered. It's covered completely under warranty, right?
Yeah, they just don't have the part.
Yeah,
Oh,
Of course they don't.
And so it's going to be a couple days. The good thing is we have 2 units in the house. One that services the bedroom and a couple other rooms. And this was the original main body unit before the addition was put on when we moved in with my mom. But we also have a heat pump when we enclose the screen porch into a sunroom. And if I open the windows to the den out to the sunroom, cool air can flow from that. So it hasn't been too bad. And the house is brick over cinder block.
Now, how
So it
hot
holds
does
the-
it get in September in where you are?
We're due to get to 90 at the end of
Oof.
this week. But we're brick over cinder block. So it holds cool air relatively well. And we can run the fan
Yeah.
so we can keep air circulating, which will help tremendously.
We're, thank God, getting to we can open windows weather.
Well, we had a couple of days of that after Ida
Mm.
passed by. We had a couple nights that the lows went into the 50s. So it was that bit of harbinger of fall, but it's always a false alarm at this time of year for us.
your lows went into the 50s.
Yeah. 50.
You know what we call that in Texas? Winter.
I know. I don't like it particularly, but it was it was nice because we had the windows open and it was just so refreshing. I actually got very annoyed last Saturday because they had the windows open and a cricket encampment set itself up
Oh, good.
outside of the window, and of course I was going on Harry's stream and it was like, fuck, I have to close the windows.
Did you also rustle some potato chips?
No, I didn't. But a train started up right at 11 o'clock, and I was like, so as the train's in competition, and I lowered the window that's directly next to me because that's the one that would be picked up on the mic, and I could still hear the fucking crickets.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, you little bastards. I mean, do you watch Monkey Stream? Because that's all I could think of was his idiot cricket in the window well.
I used to have that problem at my dad's because I had a room in the basement
Mm-hmm.
and I had 2 windows. And they both had window wells and freaking tons of it would sound like I had a cricket family in my room. But
Were they paying rent?
Yeah. Sora, how was your day?
Oh, it was really, really good. We've lost one of our workers at work. She's moved. She's actually moved your way, BP. So big journey. So we're down.
Now you live in Greenland, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I live just about 5 blocks away from Santa's workshop.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
She actually lives in British Columbia.
Which is as far as Texans know, it's around the Arctic Circle.
No. No, it's not. Part of it is.
Actually, part of it actually is.
And then
but
There's
parts
But
like
the
a
part-
desert, the rest is rainforest.
yeah, BC is a weird place.
They're
The
like
rest is on fire. It's
There-
fine.
They're alternately on fire and coastal comfort. You know,
Part of
I mean, you see Sora's avatar. I mean, that's what it takes to live up there. Just saying. You know.
yeah, most of its major city is populated by rampant drug addiction, but that's
Uh,
yeah.
but it's pretty.
But it's
Yeah.
pretty.
legal.
Nice
Drug
scenery, and
addiction.
quality meth.
You can really smell the meth.
Legal heroin,
Clean air.
legal heroin.
Being handed out by city officials
Yeah.
because that's cool and
Because that makes
kosher
sense.
nowadays.
Hey,
Does it have a
look,
little sticker saying "Vote Trudeau" on it?
Oh God, yeah, probably. But yeah, Sora is about, if you're driving, probably a good 3 or 4 day drive
Yeah,
from me.
yeah, and they
I-
have a doggy, so
Oh, yeah, that's
they're gonna be about 4 days.
4
I
days.
think.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
if you're, and I say 3 days, like that's if you're driving like super fast and not stopping.
it would be as if I were driving to Harry.
Ugh.
Pretty much.
Maybe not that far.
It's close.
Yeah, that far.
It's close because I'm actually
It's a 3,000-mile drive.
the
for
way
you,
the nation
Prospero.
bends, the continent bends.
Hmm.
If you consider BP is not due north of me, but she's a lot closer to due north of me than you would think.
Yeah.
Just by that bend. It's a little bit like how Atlanta's due south of Detroit. And so people are always confused that Alabama is in Central Time because it's part of the South. Doesn't it belong in Eastern Time like Georgia? No. No.
Actually, you know what? I'm looking at. She is almost due north of you.
Yeah.
I happen to know where Blind Press lives, and
I as well.
It,
Our earthquake that was centered out in
it's
Louisa.
almost exactly due north.
Yeah, our earthquake that was centered out in Louisa was felt in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow.
Because it was basically like a blanket snap that ran most of the wave ran north.
Yeah.
Very little of it was felt more than like 25 or 30 miles south of the epicenter. I mean, it was felt, but not to the extent.
But you're 500 miles away from Blind Press. You are about 3,000 miles away from Harry.
Yeah, and that would be a solid 3 days of travel, if not 4 or 5. I mean, you can get, if you're swapping out drivers and you want to go for 12 to 14 hours a day, you can do it in 3 days. But who the fuck wants to do that?
No, because on the way, you want to stop. Like once you get out of the Coquihalla and out of the worst part of the driving is actually, or the most dangerous part is crossing into Calgary. Because it's so high up.
Yeah.
You get all sorts of inclement weather any time of year. But then once you cross, you're into beautiful areas. You have Lake Louise and Banff, and you want to stop there.
And no straight roads. No straight roads up there.
Not until you hit Saskatchewan.
Saskatchewan.
Yeah, Saskatchewan.
Not really. And then you see to the end of the East Coast.
well, that's like our Nebraska and Kansas and Oklahoma and
which Saskatchewan is due north of.
Yeah.
Yes, it is those plains that
it's the ironed part of the continent.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good way to put it.
That is a great way to put that. Yeah.
Yeah, where it's actually not that difficult to drive 600 miles in a day, but it is the tedium.
You can even go to sleep. You nice straight road.
It's where bees go to die. They just commit suicide on windshields in Nebraska. I'm convinced of that. Because it's yay corn. Okay, after about an hour. Okay.
I've been through that in the southern part of Texas with the monarch butterfly migration. That was awful.
corpses everywhere.
Well, they get in your windshield wipers. That's really it's really annoying. Really, truly is annoying.
Yeah.
But anyway, so be that as it may. Blind Press, did you have a good day today?
I did. It was an awesome day. The kids went back to school, and the youngest started big boy school today.
Oh,
Yeah.
cute.
So now is that pre-K or K?
It's well, it would be pre-K for you guys. It's
Okay.
JK up here, junior kindergarten.
Right. Also, just kidding. But anyway, I'm teasing.
But he, so now he's going. Him and his brother are going to the same school.
Was
now.
Mom all teary?
No, I think I actually was good. But it was weird. It was weird. Because I've had Alex home for like a year and a half.
Yeah.
But it was just, I remember carrying, Logan around in the carrier and trying to get him to go to sleep, and now he's going to kindergarten. And but they both had really good days, so that was good. There was no like issues, because you know how kids can be when they, the first couple, like when they get back to school, especially after a long time away.
Yeah.
They can be ridiculous sometimes. So
they could be a little stabby.
Yeah. But they were both really good.
Good.
And then I got the news about my tech endeavors with the assistive devices program. So it looks like I'm going for the newest latest Mac Mini desktop with like 16 gigs of RAM and a braille display. But the crappy thing is that these computers aren't sold with a monitor, and I guess because I'm totally blind, they're not going to cover a monitor. So Pincalo and I have to go and buy a monitor. So hit up blindpress.net. No, I'm kidding. Well, I'm only partially kidding.
Can't blame you, honey. Show where you can.
But yeah, so I at least am gonna have a new, and he said it would take about 3 months for the paperwork to process. So I'll have the computer either around Christmas or just after Christmas.
Oh, awesome.
That's nice.
Yeah.
So, I think it sounds like things are moving right along, and it sounds like a really good day for you.
It was a good day, yes.
Good. Geodes, how you doing, bud?
I am sleep deprived.
Fun.
I got to bed late, which has been a trend lately.
Yeah. Why is that trending?
I stay up. I tend to stay up late to entertain myself, because I don't really like waking up early in the mornings, anyways. And after work, I like to decompress. So, but
who does like waking up in the morning? Jesus.
Yeah, in my case, I kept waking up like every 30 minutes or 15 minutes all night.
That sucks.
Yeah. So, and then I had a dermatologist appointment at like 8 o'clock, or actually closer to 9. So I had to force myself up to go to that. And I've power napped a couple times today, but I've been kind of having like headaches all day. So, but otherwise I'm actually all right for the most part. It's not been too bad. So.
All right. So, pretty standard day for you. A little bit of sleep deprived, but that might make some of your reasoning and logic even more interesting on the show. So,
Exactly.
It's nice to have you. Harry, how was your day today? You had a good day?
It was an okay day today. I'm still fighting with this reverse osmosis water filter thing. I replaced all 4 stages of this goddamn thing.
Well, you probably better explain what that is just a little bit.
Well, basically, it's a little countertop water filter, and I put my hard, nasty water that is totally terrible for making tea into it, and it filters out the sediment, and then it runs it over carbon, then it runs it through reverse osmosis, which is a process that takes half of the water and puts all of the contaminants in it and then dumps that down the drain, and then only good pure water is supposed to come out of it. So I replaced all of the filters and all of the, all of that stuff, put Humpty back together again, and it's managing to spit out water that's twice as polluted as the water going in.
Wow.
It's magic.
It's magic.
Yeah,
It's a shit-making machine. It's awesome.
So it's basically a
The
sludge
farmers are
maker.
jealous.
Yeah. It's working out. So yeah, technology is my friend.
There's a Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego video game where you had to reconfigure Roman plumbing. And that's what it reminds me of.
Oh, good.
So other than your reverse osmosis, how's life in the IT business?
Well, it was interesting. I had a meeting with some people from Europe who only knew of me but didn't really know me. And there's always a point in the meeting where if you're billed as the technical expert, they're going to test you in various ways.
Yeah. Yes, of course.
Luckily, they asked all the right questions, so I did really well.
You hit it out of the park.
Yeah, which was good. Well, I mean, they could have asked other questions. I would have looked completely ridiculous. But yeah, I had a really productive meeting today, and I'm going to spend a lot of my customers' money.
Yay! I hope some of it is going to be spent on Harry.
Yeah, I sure hope so too.
Yeah, that's when I hear about some of the amounts of money people are paying for cloud storage. I'm beginning to think some of that stuff might be a little overpriced, and enterprising entrepreneur could go in there and make $1 or $2.
Yeah, one could possibly do that.
Wink, wink.
I had ambitions to do that sort of stuff a lot more, and I know I've mentioned this on a stream, but I went out to Sand Hill Road and was going to talk to some guys about putting together a business, and it was back in 1996. It was a search engine designed to help artists and movie companies track down violations of their copyright.
Wow.
And the people who I pitched this to said, no, I don't think we'd be able to sell something like that.
Really?
Yeah, I kid you not. The trouble is having a good idea too early is the same thing as having a bad idea.
Yeah.
Right.
It's one of those lessons that you kind of learn. It's totally fine to have a fantastic idea, but if you're just several years too early, venture capitalists are like, I'm not going to make my money back in the time frame I want.
It's not a good idea yet.
I'll just build a car wash or do literally anything else that will give me my money back in 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't. If you come
Oh,
up
they're
with an
completely
idea
agnostic.
that's good in like 10 years, they're just no.
But
So yeah, I should probably get on this making money thing before I'm retired.
yeah, as long as they have it to spend, you might as well help them spend it. I think that's nice.
Good plan.
It's
Thanks.
really kind of a Christian thing to do. Who do I invoice for that business consulting? So,
Only the right thing to do.
yeah. So at any rate, well, in leftover things from last Tuesday, or maybe it was Saturday. I think we have a workaround for my malfunctioning microphone. So we're going to try this for a while. I'm actually still using the Blue Yeti, and just am being very careful with the cord. I really do think that's what most of the problem is with this. And there are a couple of things going on. There's actually an electronic problem and an acoustic problem. The acoustic problem is a loud fan in my laptop because it's a Dell. After you've had the laptop for a couple of years, the fan starts making loud noises because it's programmed to do that. I'm pretty convinced that's they do that on purpose. And so at any rate, that's about all I've got hanging fire. It's been interesting time. I talked with my dad, my 93-year-old dad, today, and it's interesting to hear his perspective on things and how calm and relaxed he is. Of course, he's not going to have to deal with it. About things like the Canadian situation and the problems that we have with leadership in Congress generally, and especially in the executive branch in the United States. And he's just like, these things come and go. You get incompetent criminals like Joe Biden, and he'll be in there for a while, and people get tired of it. They'll do better for a while. And he said, as long as the long-term general trend is getting better, that's the thing you got to keep your eye on. And he said, Canada's, Dad, he's so funny. He said, Canada's irrelevant. Canada's going to follow along with what the United States does, because they just don't, have enough money and commerce and, swing enough influence internationally
That's
to
our own
to
fault,
matter.
though.
Yeah, well, yeah, and he even made that point. He said part of that it's just they're self-marginalized, and the other part is they're so similar to us, they just tend to follow along in what we do. He said, so he said, Trudeau is the thing that Dad looks at and sees with Trudeau is that Trudeau has no dignity. That's the thing that really offends Dad, and he just kind of looks at that. And he's a person of immense dignity, immense personal dignity, and sees a buffoon like Biden or another buffoon like Trudeau, and bemoans the loss of dignity and class at that level. I mean, he would not have a guy like Biden in his house. He would throw him out.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Does Dr. Jill Biden bring enough gravitas that your dad
that's
might
another.
rethink it?
This is another thing that really bothers my dad is what has happened to PhDs. When Dad got his PhD, you had to do part of your thesis defense, and he was doing a heat transfer problem in high orders of math, the very highest levels of math you can get to in that kind of engineering math. He had to defend a portion of his thesis in French because you had to be fluent, not just good. You had to be fluent in a second language and able to defend your thesis in that language.
Well,
Do you think Jill can do that?
Nope.
Nope.
Not sure she can do it. Well, okay. She's not a PhD to begin with. She's a D-Ed.
She's a doctor of education.
She's a D-Ed. It's a different degree.
It is.
Is there even a dissertation for the D-Ed?
I thought
She
you
did.
had
She
to-
wrote a dissertation, but it's not defended in the same way that a scientific or even a something like economics or anthropology PhD would have a dissertation that where you are doing original research that you have to defend.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not anything like that. I mean, it may ape certain characteristics of that. It may attempt to imitate that in kind of the way a child imitates doing what its father and mother do.
I just kind of doubt she could do it in English, much less French.
Well, yeah. But as far that's interesting, Jill Biden, because some some schools offer a PhD in education that is different. And I know this because I have a cousin who has one of these.
My sister
He has
has a PhD.
A PhD in education, and it's different from a doctorate of education that the same institution offers.
Yes, the rigor for the PhD was stronger. At least
Well,
the publication work that had to be done.
Yeah, that's the only thing that is different at Emory anyway, is that they require publication, or they required my cousin to publish it, and he has a PhD in education, and he takes great pains to tell you immediately, like upon meeting strangers, what the difference is. And
I can understand that though, because like the DEd degree is just simply different. It's not a doctor of philosophy in
her
education.
thesis was student retention at the community college, meeting students' needs.
Yeah, exactly.
Jesus.
How much?
Just even the title.
Yeah. Well, I'm just wondering though. I've got a friend who did institutional research for years. His background was in political science and econometrics.
By the way, she does have a EDD, so from University of Delaware.
Education doctor.
Yeah, doctor of education. It's not a PhD.
Yeah, I wonder exactly what.
She's a hell of a doctor.
What kind of statistical content there was in that, or whether it was just recitation of statistics.
I'm so glad you asked that, because I'm reading Student Retention at the Community College, Meeting Students' Need by Jill Jacobs Biden, a dissertation/executive position paper submitted to the faculty of the University of Delaware in partial fulfillment of the requirements for the degree Doctor of Education with a major in masturbation, fall 2006.
She actually wrote that?
Well, I may be helping.
You have to, right?
I may be helping.
No,
along.
not masturbation, but I mean, like you actually have to write the
executive position paper.
Oh yes.
Yeah. See, that's not a dissertation. Is not a position paper.
Yeah. Here's the 5-sentence abstract. This executive position paper, EPP, studies student retention in the community college and Delaware Technical and Community College in particular. She did not write. I read that sentence straight. In particular, the paper focuses on 4 areas of students' needs: academic, psychological, social, and physical. That's the Oxford comma. An overview of the paper is given, and an introduction to Delaware Technical and Community College is presented. Passive voice. They would have flunked me at Northwestern. First, the nature of the pre-tech developmental population is discussed. Then a literature review offers current research by experts in the field. In addition, the results from pre-tech students, faculty, and advisor surveys, and interviews are analyzed. Statistical information underscores the problem of retaining students, and personal accounts from students provide insight as to why students drop out. Yes, you saw students 3 times in one sentence.
I was going to say...
Overall problem areas are identified, and recommendations and solutions are offered and encouraged. So we see, incompetence, just bad grammar all the way through, and this is getting a doctorate of education.
Mm-hmm.
Won't someone think of the children?
Well, it ain't me. I ain't no senator's wife.
I don't even know what to say. This is, and I won't read any more of this, but it's so bad. It makes you want to commit suicide just to even read this. And it is no. Oh, this is just an okay. So it's 24 pages long.
A doctoral dissertation is 24 pages long.
Page
That's
24 of 24.
Holy
God. I don't
My
even know.
mother's master's thesis in philosophy was longer than that.
Of course it was.
Oh, yeah. My
Of course.
senior paper at Northwestern was 60 pages.
My paper for,
And that ended with 100
Yeah.
pages of footnotes, for
I
God's
mean,
sake.
My-
you start at 12 pages in undergrad because you have to learn how to do proper citations and
Yeah.
research.
Right,
So
right.
that's a little bit short.
My grade 12 like history / politics teacher for our end of year essays expected at least 6 pages, and this was high school.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think my con law paper was easily 25. That might have been with citations.
Do you think this is the
Right.
kind of course that she knew it was an easy degree?
Uh-huh. Yes, exactly.
And I
Yes.
was be like, just, you tickle the right boxes without, I mean,
This is how Delaware gets administrators. They put them
Oh.
through this program.
okay. So it was less of a,
Hmm.
oh, she's the perfect fit, and more of the, here's the next
I-
candidate we want.
I'd be willing to
Here
bet
in the
this is
city.
how they cultivate their principals
Mm.
and their deans of community colleges,
Mm-hmm.
as well as some of their professorial staff in community colleges in the education department.
The front page.
It smells of administrative curation.
Yeah. The front page says, just in support of what you're saying, says copyrighted 2006 Jill Jacobs Biden, all rights reserved.
You copyrighted your okay.
The whole thing read as if it were dictated to an aide.
Or maybe the aide just went ahead and wrote it.
Well, that's kind of what I'm thinking. She was, at the time, the second lady.
Mhm.
To be, almost. He was
Yeah.
amping up.
Yeah, 2006.
He was amping up. He was a very active senator at the time. I'm really sure she put in the hard work. Aren't you all?
Well, no, she clearly busted her ass and richly deserves it. She's a hell of a doctor. I really don't see why they didn't name her Surgeon General.
No shit.
Which Whoopi Goldberg had suggested. I thought that was a solid idea.
Wisdom from the gals at the View.
Jeez. Joy Behar for Secretary of State. That'd be a happening administration.
I do have to
Oh,
wonder
God.
whether she would have fucked up as badly as Blinken.
Yeah, you actually make a pretty good point there.
There's a chance that she actually has some hidden organizational skills of which we're unaware.
Well, yeah, considering a box of rocks has more organizational skills than Tony Blinken has shown.
I used an expression that people used to use for ages recently to describe the withdrawal from Afghanistan. And I said, this was a
What's that?
withdrawal put together by people who couldn't organize a one-car funeral.
Yeah.
It just was.
Well, the thing,
It's
you
just
have a
wow.
situation where a lot of people are going to be responsible for different parts of this, and it's very important to have a strong executive who is not just coordinating all the piece parts that have to come together, but holding people's feet to the fire,
Mhm.
forcing them to make commitments to do things in the right order, facing unpleasant, inconvenient truths, like, maybe September 11th isn't doable, even though it's a great political payoff day. In order to be responsible, we have to take the time to do all this other stuff first. But instead, he just put a stake in the ground, said, it's going to happen September 11th. I don't care, what happens to make that happen, but that's the only thing I want you to concern yourself about. And then he basically turned away from that.
Yes.
People went into cover your ass mode as best they could, and the shit hit the fan. The first mistake that they made was abandoning Bagram. Bagram was much more, it's 25 miles north of Kabul.
It's a perfect military support.
It's much more defendable. It's way far away from this hotbed of Taliban activity. It's
they just thought they'd take their public stand at a public airport.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so they said, well, we don't have all the people we need to defend both airfields, and then they say something like the decision was made. There was no decision made. They simply said, hey, we've got to get out of Bagram. Okay, we'll shut it down and turn it over. We'll turn off the electricity and hand it over to the Afghan army, which 300,000 strong. They're brilliant, all SEAL team guys. They're ready to defend Afghanistan.
Did you see Angry Cops? What Angry Cops said about this? He said where any sergeant in the field could have told you that those guys were a bunch of jackleg morons who'd like to clean their weapons like they were starting them.
Yeah.
Blowing sand out of a loaded barrel of a weapon.
Oh, yeah.
And what I find particularly offensive is in his interview with Jennifer Griffin. Was it Friday or Saturday? Millie said in the lessons learned, under lessons learned, not lessons we already knew. The Afghan National Army just wasn't ready. Gee, really? How'd you figure that out? You turn over all your material to them. You don't keep your hands on it. You don't keep eyes on it. You turn all your material over to the Afghan National Army. One guy says, I'm from the Taliban, boo. They turn tail and run, and a terrorist organization now has a larger air force than Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I file under lessons learned. Gosh, they weren't ready. This God damn it.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that's going to come out of this is that by leaving all these weapons, and that's just indefensible. Can you imagine if Trump had done something like this? He never would, but the media would
be impeaching him for treason.
Oh yeah, they
right
would
now.
arrest him. They would arrest him. He'd be in prison.
And I would be almost okay with saying, well, given the fact that we know that the Taliban and Al Qaeda were up each other's ass 20 years ago, you could almost make that case to me. I mean, I think carrying things all the way to the COC is a little ridiculous. I think a lot of this shit should stop in the E-ring, and I think a lot of those guys should be marched into the center of the Pentagon and shot at ground zero. Quite literally, what they used to call the cafeteria. But the unbelievable incompetence that you don't leave a shell staff at the embassy and get everybody else out. You don't tell the contractors you have till next Tuesday to get the fuck out of the country. And then seriously, we're not going to be able to cover your asses. But I mean, give them warning to trot their asses over to Bagram and get the next lift out. But no, they shut down Bagram and then they pick the city airport. That's like saying, I think we're going to take our defensive last stand at LaGuardia.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then having done all this, having made all these mistakes, this organism of a government that, of the United States cannot react to it in any way other than a political way, in a cover your ass, paint it with the best possible coat of paint, and try and slink away from it, as fast as you can. It really is disheartening. I mean, it's as though there are no adults in the room. I don't know. Somebody else talk. I'm talking too much.
I have some thoughts.
Please, Harry.
So, when you talk about the government, I mean, thinking about sort of how I grew up in the age of people talking about stuff like Catch-22. And you would have these great satirists and these great writers, and some not so great
Joseph
writers,
Heller.
right, who would write these books about incompetence on a level that it's so epic that it seems like it has to be a work of fiction.
Yeah.
And we
Yes.
have arrived at one of those moments.
We're living
Because-
in a farce. Right?
You think to yourself, okay, how is this possible? How is it possible that these people, these career military people, could do something this dumb? Is this part of, like, did we leave stuff behind as part of a payoff? Is this part of a deal we made with the Taliban to get our people out when they saw everything was going to collapse? Did we just deliberately leave weapons behind? Is this
Because
a thing?
if we'd done that, it would have looked different from this. But please go on, Harry.
I don't know. I'm not so sure, because we also left behind piles of cash.
Yes.
Now, in a previous episode of Minions of the Zoo, I've said there's this stuff, it's called thermite. I can get rid of a lot of weapons really, really quickly if I plan ahead a little bit. Just use
Yes.
thermite to melt the shit out of them. Goodbye drone, goodbye helicopter, goodbye piles of rifles. But the part where all reality breaks down are the piles of money. Money is
a good
flammable. You
Yeah.
literally, it would
You can
take,
burn it.
You could burn it. You could just take like one stack of hundreds, light it on fire, and just put it in with the other hundreds, and it would all just burn. You wouldn't even have to take the time to go full Boy Scout and make like a little chimney and stuff. It would just burn. You can just get rid of all the money. If you go, I don't have time to carry this money, maybe I should light it on fire. You could just do that. You have to consciously decide to be this dumb. This is a level of stupid that is past the normal level of stupid that random chance allows for.
This is
Yeah,
lazy.
Occam's razor doesn't work here.
This isn't stupid. This is lazy.
I don't think it's lazy. I think these people did it on purpose. Because I can't think of a logical explanation other than that. Because even random chance doesn't allow for this level of dumb.
Actually, I think you point out a good point with the money. That doesn't seem possible to be anything other than purposeful. I don't know.
Mhm.
Blind Press, what do you think?
A few years ago, I probably would have just been like, straight up, that's a stupid conspiracy theory. But the more I've, looked at different sources of media and news and, seen what's going on, it's either this was on purpose or this was just a supremely lazy, I don't think it was sheer stupidity. I think it was either straight up malicious
Or failure to coordinate.
failure to
anything.
just absolute lazy. We'll just go with the flow. We'll just figure it out as we go along.
How about this? A bunch of people at the levels of responsibility for this stuff who said, "Hey, that's not my problem. That's this other guy's problem."
Yeah.
Everybody says that, and everything falls through the cracks.
Well, yeah, that means
Until you get to the money, as Harry pointed out, that's what I can't resolve, because that never happens with money. That never happens with money.
Yeah, you find a way. You either take it with you
Right.
or you destroy it. You don't leave huge stacks of money.
Yes.
you also don't leave lists with all the names of your contacts.
Yeah, that was when what was it? The State Department?
All
That
the
was
people
like-
that helped us.
Yeah, it was like, here's everybody that helped us. Here is
Yeah.
the citizens.
Here's your kill list.
Yeah, here's
Yeah.
our citizens that are living in the country. Here is it's like
They're
You
already killing them, by the way. They've already killed an American citizen.
I'm shocked.
Yeah,
She says, with no shock in her voice at all.
right.
Yeah, it's
That's the one that we know about, that we absolutely can put our finger on. They probably have killed many more by now. I wouldn't be surprised.
well, we left our contractors we just decided to pack up and go so quickly. There was nothing they could do. I mean, and really, they weren't offered rides out in the manner that you would have expected them to. We left.
No, because there was no plan.
Of course, there was no plan. It was hit this date or hit. And the funny thing is, because there was so much resistance to Trump's initial May plan, apparently there was no work on contingency for leaving. It's as if the MIC, the military industrial complex, and that includes E-Ring, all thought that they were going to be able to talk him out of this. And then all of a sudden it was like, you can't talk him out of this.
Do you really think that they were thinking they could talk him out of that?
Biden?
Yeah.
I think they might have misapprehended the situation in the White House, yes.
Mm.
I do think they may have actually thought that there was some level of competency in that building.
Yeah, I have another theory too.
Okay, what's that?
I think there's a possibility here because remember, think back to Trump. On a few occasions, he told the generals to do stuff, and they would just lie to him and not do it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the same group of generals, largely. I think there's a very good chance that what happened was the generals didn't want to go. And they drug their feet, and they drug their feet, and they drug their feet. And Biden, in one of his cool, rational, oriented moments, that's sarcasm, had a huge spasm where he basically threw a tantrum and said, I'm going to show you who's boss. You're going to be out by this date no matter what.
He called their bluff.
He called their bluff because he's the big, strong, powerful executive, and that's what big, strong, powerful executives do.
Put their foot down without regard to the consequences.
And they saluted and said, yes, sir, and the consequences are what you see before us. Still doesn't explain the money.
No, it doesn't.
Because in the case of the biometric data of the allies and collaborators or whatever you want to call them, a dumb person can overlook. I guess I should have brought that scanner with me. A dumb person could overlook that. A dumb person usually won't overlook the giant pile of money.
One would hope, unless they just absolutely roll in it to the point that they thought it was insignificant. But that beggars belief.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I didn't mean to stomp on Geodes, though.
Geodes was going to say something.
Well, a couple things. One is I don't know. I have a tinfoil hat theory, if you will.
I love those.
So, I think the reason why we pulled out the way we did, and the reason we left so much equipment behind, I mean, aside from just partially incompetence, I think it has more to do with creating an eternal boogeyman. I mean, you look at policies like the Patriot Act, you look at policies like what Edward Snowden revealed that with the U.S. government spying on us. If you create something that allows people to, if we ever get attacked in the future, and you now create a scenario where you could say, okay, well, we're going to have to try and tighten up security to make a U.S. citizen safe, and they start passing more of these large acts and everything. I mean, it's honestly, there's a certain date that comes to mind at the beginning of this year where that I'm reminded of, where they passed a giant pamphlet of all kinds of stuff as if they almost had pre-prepared a couple days after it happened. To me, it's far more advantageous for them to use the Taliban for that purpose than anything else. I think that's really what it boils down to. So
you see this as a chance for the government to control things.
Yes.
Ratchet up control.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the paradigm that you see a lot of government activity at, I suspect. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's like I've been seeing this. I mean, I haven't been aware of it, but it's been happening ever since I was basically 5. I mean, probably long before that too, but at least as far as really ramped up with 9/11. So, yeah.
Patriot Act seemed like a good idea at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mhm.
Frightened people will agree to an awful lot.
Right.
And they had a good dry run testing that theory 20 years later with the coup. You've got a whole new generation trained to believe that the government will save them now.
Mhm.
The government saved one group of, your generation, geodes, to some extent. And those up to about age 20, the government saved them from the big bad terroristy people. And now the government has saved people from the coup.
Yeah.
And you've got a whole new group of people trained. And every 20 years we need to be reminded how important the government is to us. They're terribly, terribly important to us, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, they
And of course, once the government starts getting involved in various little affairs all over the place, they don't really seem to want to stop getting more and more involved. It's kind of how that works.
It's because they care.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we
So
still have the
much.
Rural Electrification Board.
Yes.
It's important. It's important that the government have that kind of, what do they love to call it, flexibility.
I wonder
Do
what-
you remember a movie called The Wind and the Lion?
Yes.
Yes. Skep, maybe you do.
Yeah.
It's a movie basically about Candace Bergen and I guess her kid get taken hostage somewhere in the Middle East, and this is back in the day. And Brian Keith plays Teddy Roosevelt, and the villain, who's really not a villain entirely, who plays Razuli, is Sean Connery. Because there's nothing funnier than Sean Connery pretending to be like Bedouin or something. In this movie,
Unless he's pretending to be a Russian.
yeah, or
a
Zardoz.
Spaniard from Egypt.
But
Yes.
in this movie, basically this story, Teddy Roosevelt sends in the Marines basically to get out 2 hostages.
Yeah.
Goes into this
North
desert thing.
Africa. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is, to me, again, sort of frame of reference. When I was growing up, this was a movie that I would see, and things like Milton Friedman's "Free to Choose" was a book that I would read, and so I come from a particular mindset of Martin Luther King commercials about the content of one's character. So I have trouble adjusting to this new world that we live in, where we leave billions of dollars worth of weapons and cash for people and leave hundreds of people behind where they can be kidnapped or killed by a group of terrorists.
Yeah.
I don't recognize this world.
You mean it's strange for you to not only or to basically leave the weapons with which they will be killed behind?
It's nightmare is
I say
decay is
that
what
with
it is.
sarcasm. I say that with sarcasm.
I've been blasted to a world that looks like it's like a parallel world
Mhm.
to mine, but none of it is making any fucking sense.
Right? Like I said yesterday to Functional at the end of the stream, but because he's like, I don't. He was saying something similar to what Harry just said. I don't recognize this place, this world, and I'm like, don't worry. Soon we'll be asked to produce our agonizers, and because it feels like that. It really feels like somehow we've, there's been a transporter accident. And
Bad Sulu's on Twitter.
Sulu's on Twitter, and it's just crazy.
There is a mirror feel to it.
Yeah.
There's very many things that are just as they were, and then there are these certain things that are completely out of kilter. I'm beginning to wonder if we need to start asking certain people if they're replicants. Yeah, because it's dystopic. There's a dystopian feel to everything right now. Because
I think you would be better off asking them if they are Borg.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's precisely what they are. There is
I-
a hive mind,
My buddy
and it's
my,
incompetent.
my buddy has, so he believes that there's graphene in the COVID shots.
Mm.
And that there is so much of it in the COVID shots that it's going to turn us all into Borg.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Or number 2 lead pencils.
I was gonna say, yeah. I'm ready to take your SAT, fellow
Good.
kids.
Good Lord.
he's
Yeah,
he's a special one. This one, he thinks that the person that gave me the measles was vaccinated. She was just vaccinated with a live virus.
Wait, what?
Because the MMR vaccine is totally a live virus vaccine.
Yeah.
No.
Because
Totally.
that's how that works.
This
Well,
isn't
your
the
batch
polio
was, yeah.
vaccine. Okay?
Yeah, maybe your batch was. Very good, Harry.
Yeah, it's like, I'm sorry, but the polio vaccine, one of them, was the only one that used the live virus.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, Salk, thank you. I was trying to remember. Sabin was the dead
Sabin
virus.
was the killed virus.
Yeah. And there were some peculiar cases of like through waste matter of someone who had recently had the Salk. Polio was contracted by an individual who had not been
Well,
True
that
story.
sucks.
treated. Yeah.
Yeah,
The
you know you're
lieutenant
having a
governor-
bad day when.
The lieutenant governor of Virginia under I can't remember
that's
which governor.
right.
John Hager. Is it Jenna Bush Hager? Is that the one who married?
Don't give me the
Yeah,
line. I know.
I think
I
it's
remember
Jenna.
the Virginia tie-in though.
Yeah, it put him in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. It did not paralyze him. It's just to put him in a wheelchair. But he contracted polio changing his son's diaper. His little boy had the Salk vaccine. And he said, yeah, stuff happens. He was slated to be transferred to New York. He worked for American Tobacco. Huge promotion. I mean, he was headed for top tier of the company. And the building in New York wasn't wheelchair accessible. So they had to laterally shift him in Richmond. And it put quite a spike in his career. And it could have embittered him, but it didn't. It didn't. He was a very jovial man. Very, very. I met him only once.
Tobacco.
Well, he did not talk like that. That sounded like Hal Heflin, for Christ's sake, the Mississippi accent. Oh, Hal Heflin. You can go back and find tape of the Watergate hearings where you have a gentleman from Tennessee speaking.
Howard Baker.
Baker, and whose counsel was Fred Dalton Thompson,
Right.
the actor.
Yeah, Fred Thompson. That's right.
It was his
A
counsel
young
for that.
Fred Thompson.
Yeah, and then there was Hal Heflin.
Heflin.
More Tom.
Much man.
Whatever what he was saying. Half an hour would pass, and it would be like, was that a comma or a period? I mean, seriously,
Does
much
anyone-
worse than I.
It's like, does anyone know what he said and if he's done?
Yeah, that was about it. I could understand him, but it's the term I've always heard for it is Mississippi mushmouth, and it is.
That's the thing. In my cousins come from Southern Alabama. There's just not any more heart of Dixie than that. But when they talk like this, and you can at least understand what they're saying as long as you live long enough to hear the end of the sentence.
Yes.
But that in Mississippi, all the consonants become soft.
Yep.
Yeah,
And some of the soft consonants just disappear entirely.
it's very elusive and extremely slow, and all up. It's back in the mouth.
Yeah.
It's like they're eating around a mouthful of mush peas. Speaking around that, and it is a fascinating thing to hear. Unless you were really accustomed to Southern accents, if you went back and watched a clip of the Watergate hearings, you'd be like, Jesus Christ, did they close caption this?
Oh, actually, it's funny you should mention that. I actually have kinfolk in Jackson, Mississippi. They cannot understand that mushy talk that happens in the. It's actually in lots of rural parts of. It's not just the southern part of Mississippi, but it's lots of the rural parts where they raw. I can't even say it.
Yeah, you know, and it's like it's. You've heard the jokes about arns. I got an arm in the far.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
ARN. What's the definition? I got muscles like iron.
Mush it up and soften your tongue so that you're not really making crisp sounds, and that's what it sounds like. You have to decipher the vowels.
Yeah.
To puzzle out what the consonants would have been.
Real quick, I think Sora needs to crash out.
Sora, have we finally bored you to sleep?
Unfortunately, that was before this, and no titillating conversation was going to keep up my eyelids. All my toothpicks have snapped.
Oh man,
I'm very sorry.
I'm so glad that you could come by and spend time with us. I was beginning to get a complex. I was thinking you weren't going to come on my show anymore. And
the Tuesdays are so difficult. Wednesdays and Thursdays are my longest days for work, and the heaviest. And usually Wednesdays are surgeries.
Yeah.
So
I understand.
It's just a shitty day. Oh, sorry. It's just a terrible day to join.
No, some days are terrible. Some days are shitty. But at any rate, I really do appreciate you coming by and hanging with us. And you're welcome here. Anytime you want to come on, love to have you.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. I always love hanging out with all of you, and hopefully I will see you on Saturday. If not the panel, then definitely chat. And a wonderful good night to everyone.
Wonderful.
Good night.
Don't hurt your head on the pillow.
Good night.
Yeah.
Oh, boom.
All right.
Good night, Nat.
You guys have me for about another 5 minutes.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Then can I bring up my outrage from town, Skep?
Sure.
Okay, tomorrow they take down the Robert E. Lee statue on Monument Avenue in Richmond.
Robert E. Lee, who was he?
The state Supreme Court ruled that the covenant that covered that land that was donated specifically for that statue was too restrictive to the state's ability to adapt to changing moral and social.
So this is the Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court of Virginia.
Of Virginia saying
they're the only ones that would have a say. Yes.
Yeah, saying that the government must be able to react to changing mores and social whimsy, and
political.
And this kind of a covenant is too restrictive. How many other covenants is this going to blow out of the water?
Yeah.
How many other contractual arrangements between private individuals that were made in good faith at one point and upon which businesses rely are now going to be able to be proved null and void by some asshole lawyer?
When the land was deeded, the agreement is signed and one party by the governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia. And
how many business
by the
arrangements are going to come apart now?
That's how locked in that was.
Well,
and the legislature couldn't change this, you see.
You see how destructive this is, Prospero?
Oh, incredibly destructive. Very, yes. Anybody, I would counsel you now, do not gift anything to the state. Never gift or deed anything to the state.
Not to Virginia, anyway.
You cannot, any state. I can see any state Supreme Court looking at it like this. There's just absolutely, the state is too powerful now.
This absolutely sets a precedent.
Yeah, it does, and it. I don't I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it puts a big dent in the concept of covenants at all.
Mhm.
But there was a
That's the
covenant.
problem that I have.
Well, there was a covenant governing our neighborhood, and because the word adjacent with, the phrase adjacent with was used and not part of, or they deemed that there really wasn't any covenant restriction on the area that was adjacent to where the building was going to take place.
Fuck off.
So they were able to put a bridge out of our neighborhood to another piece of land going through covenanted land. So they busted our covenant based on one preposition, basically, in original deeds. And for Chesterfield County, that then had carried over to the city of Richmond. And our civic association out here said they really didn't want any part in the lawsuit. They didn't have any interest in it. And I was like, well, that's because you've just given up the fact. You now have an unenforceable covenant. You removed yourself from this as a party of interest. And a lawyer, and the lawyer who had our case wanted to appeal it. And people were like, we can't trust that the judges are going to see property issues the way they used to. It used to be very, very difficult to break a covenant like that on deeded land, especially in a housing development, where you'd be putting a road and this kind of stuff. That kind of land used to be protected. It would require an eminent domain action to take it. But
Probably
now,
have some dependent
there was
covenant. I'm sorry.
There was some money involved in this one, honey.
What I mean is dependent covenants, other legal agreements that rest on that legal agreement, and those come undone when this legal agreement goes away. I mean, there's potential for attorneys to just go in there and harvest these. Oh Jesus!
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, and there's absolutely, I have no idea what they intend to do with the statue. They still left the pediments up of the other statue. Those were controlled by the city. This had to go.
How do you test for restrictiveness? What are the elements of being too restrictive? What things must it prevent the government from being able to react to? What changing mores? What changing social context?
What mob?
Yeah. What mob does it prevent the government from kowtowing to?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the application here. But if you think about taking this principle and applying it in other things, you pretty well undo a lot of that covenant is clearly as restrictive as this other covenant. Therefore, I want it.
Well, we have a statue that is actually a grave. The man is buried beneath the statue. I expect that one to be moved relatively soon, because they're going to use something similar to this. They can't make but so much of an argument because that's like his third burial place. But
grave hopper.
Well, not he did.
I don't even know what that word means, but I do know that we have a Canadian who wants to hop on the hell out of here, and she's probably dying by now. So you want to shill and chill? I
do want to shill. So tomorrow, Functional and I will again be gathering together for Canadian Wednesday. And that will be basically pre-debate prep. Because Thursday, I think it's at 8, or I'm not sure. I have to figure out the time. Check my Twitter. But Functional and I will be covering the only English debate. Because apparently in this election, English Canada can get fucked. It's all about the French people. They got 2 debates. So we're gonna cover the English debate, and we're gonna make this a little bit fun. We're gonna make this into a bit of a drinking game. So Functional and I are probably gonna be a bit more Well, we're already pretty boisterous, so extra boisterous on Thursday. You won't want to miss that. And also Star Trek stream on Saturday. I have to DM the topic to you guys in the group. Skep,
Okay.
it's the one from Ghost Dog. That Ghost Dog sent me on Patreon.
Okay. By the way, do you want to know when that debate is? It is Thursday, September 9th. Okay.
Yeah.
And it is 9 to 11 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time.
Oh, beautiful. I hope I can get the kids in bed before then.
So there you go.
And this is on which channel?
It's going to be on Blind Press channel on YouTube.
Okay. Cool,
So
cool.
you can come and watch Functional and I'll be, because I'll be using CPAC, which is the Canadian, public access politics. I use their channel quite often in the streams, and I tend not to get copyright strikes from them, so.
It's going to be moderated by Shaki Curl.
Who?
Shaki Curl, president of the Angus Reid Institute, with the participation of journalists Rosemary Barton from CBC News, Melissa Ridgen from APTN News, Evan Solomon from CTV, and Mercedes Stevenson from Global News.
So all of the big media.
Mhm.
Rebel
Yep.
Media apparently was in court today, begging to be allowed to cover the debates.
That's
I'm
ridiculous.
I'm not
But the courts
sure.
found it was too restrictive to.
Well played, sir.
Good
Well
callback.
played indeed.
So
All right. So
check
anyway,
that out, and also I'll be on Twitch tomorrow night with Beat the Blind Girl. So yes, all
so
of that.
that's a full boat for you, young lady, and
Yes, it is.
raising kids on top of all of that, including Pinkalo, who I consider to be a kid. And
Pretty
I
much.
just, thank you for coming by and spending the time. We totally understand you might be a little bit tired.
Thanks
And
for having me, guys.
thank you for everything that you do. And guys, come join us for the Star Trek stream. We really do have a good time.
We always
Love to have you
fun.
come and watch us make fools of ourselves. So at any rate, thanks for being a part of this, Blind Press.
All right. Good night, you guys.
Night,
Good night, hon.
baby.
Good night.
Good night.
We'll see you later. Well, they're dropping one by one.
Just the Canadians.
Just the Canadians, yeah. What is it about that? So
Yeah.
The sleepy white north.
yeah, the Great White North. They all take off too. So what are you gonna
They're all
do?
going to go meet up at Tim Hortons for coffee and
And sing Gordon Lightfoot songs.
Yes.
Sing Gordon
Yes,
Lightfoot
indeed.
songs.
Out on the road like a low down Joe. Anyway, so Harry, what's to become of us?
Oh, you mean society, this country?
Yeah, life,
You
the
gotta
universe, and
narrow it.
everything.
You gotta narrow it down a little bit.
Life, the universe, and everything. Where is this all going to head? What is going to be the next big twist for United States politics after the Biden spasm?
Well, once people reach the point where they figure out they can just vote themselves free money, is there really any turning back at that point? Because we keep thinking that things are going to get worse and they're going to throw the bums out. But already you can tell that the Republicans have decided, hey, things are going great. They're going so great, in fact, why don't we just start passing a bunch of abortion laws? Because that's what the people who want to vote Joe Biden out really care about.
Yeah.
Because we
There's-
feel victory sneaking up on us, and we can't have that. We have to instead go off on this campaign to make ourselves look like sort of the old right. With its where basically you're getting a reach around from preachers and religious groups and that whole thing. The old school moral majority type stuff. So much for new ideas and business and tolerance and stuff. Now, I do sort of blame the Democrats, well, the progressives, for a lot of this, because they have been ridiculous for a very long time with this, they're practically in favor of retroactive abortion. I mean, they've really leaned into this. It should just be my decision up to 5 minutes before the birth thing. And that just doesn't pass the sniff test for most people.
Well,
Mhm.
all kidding aside, I'm
not kidding anymore. I'm using joking language, but I'm not joking here.
I'm not either. What I'm about to say is not meant in sarcasm or jest. If you've ever read the philosopher Peter Singer from Princeton, his work regarding abortion rights, he is of the opinion that up until a child is even 2 or maybe 3 years old, there's an argument to say that the woman's rights still outweigh the rights of that child to continue to exist, and that it is not different in form from or in any meaningful way from the child being inside the womb.
Well, that is as provocative and somewhat funny and cringy as that is. It's probably not productive to the conversation.
Well,
well, let me bring it back to the middle just for a little bit. Okay. So there's a group of people in this country that basically thinks life begins at conception and any talk of abortion is just anathema to them.
Right.
And then there's a group of radicals who think that abortion should be this unlimited right, like this guy you're talking about, but most of them stop after the baby's born. Okay.
Yes.
Then there's a huge group of people in the middle, of which I consider myself, who think there is a point at which it becomes wrong to terminate a pregnancy without there being some risk to the mother or other extenuating circumstance. I think most people probably fall somewhere in that squishy middle. And the problem is, instead of just trying to fight against the crazy stuff, they've gone all the way to 6 weeks and fetal heartbeat.
Yes.
And this is not going to play well with the middle, because people want something that isn't Joseph Biden. They don't want his economics. They don't want his foreign policy. They don't want him. The buyer's remorse is already setting in. So then what do the Republicans do? They're just like, oh, you don't like Biden? Hold my beer.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you reasons to not want to vote for me either, which is just going to cause a lot of people to not show up at the polls.
Well, the rest of my thought about Singer and all that was, as radical and crazy as the Dems, as the hardcore left have been about this, the Republicans were handed a chance for an easy win by just coming in and being a little bit moderate. And that would have felt so good and so reassuring and so adult to so much of the United States. But instead, they come in with, as you pointed out, this 6 weeks and fetal heartbeat. Really?
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, Raki's done a pretty good breakdown. He doesn't even think this is going to last for very long in terms of the laws are not going to be able to hold up that they're trying to pass. But this is actually something
passed.
Well, they have passed, but I mean, like, yeah, but I mean, like, they won't be able to be maintained. Like, they'll be ruled against effectively at some point. But the big thing I've been kind of thinking about too is, I've been kind of looking at I've been more reminded of like what's referred to as like new right content creators. I think Charlie Kirk and a few others.
Uh-huh.
And it's just one of those things where it's like, new labeled, same old, is kind of my attitude on a lot of that. I'm just like, there's nothing here I particularly want. So it's, I don't know. I've I've just been at this point kind of going like, it's best if I don't pay attention too closely to certain things, because it'll just make me depressed.
Do you remember Bill Clinton, Geodes, in terms of his position?
So I was very young at the time, so I don't really remember anything. But I will say, without going into too much detail, there was a policy that was passed, and this was in regards to like security, that it basically forced a family member of mine to have to go through like a lie detector test effectively. And
I'm just curious if you remember a phrase, which is safe, legal, and rare.
I don't remember
that was basically the the Bill Clinton Democrat mainstream position on abortion not that many decades ago.
Okay.
I know you were young at the time, but within your lifetime, this is what Democrats were talking about. They weren't necessarily in favor of gay marriage. They would allow civil unions. They were saying abortion should be safe, legal, and rare.
Mm-hmm.
And it is skewed to the point now where there's groups of people that are just saying, my body, my choice, this baby until it's delivered is essentially a parasite, and it's all about me, 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 me. And again, I am sort of in the middle. I think Roe, for the wrong reasons, is not the worst decision ever to be made in terms of its practical application. I'm not defending the foundation of it because Prospero will destroy me. But as, the practical application of it actually works out reasonably well.
Bad law, but they managed to accidentally
Bad
do it
writing.
right.
They managed to stumble into a decision that actually makes a certain amount of sense because, I'm a radical centrist. At least I sort of jokingly call myself that. And to my mind, you just take the standard for when you would remove somebody from life support and you turn it around. A heartbeat without brain function is not a human life. It may be life, but it's not a human life. And the fact that people are shouting past each other in the way that they are just means that, to my mind, just means everybody's being dishonest. Because everybody knows, nobody's saying, you're straw manning the pro-abortion people by saying you don't recognize this as life. Well, of course they recognize it's life, they just don't think it's human life. And the same thing happens back and forth. So you've got these two groups of angry, histrionic people that are lying about their opponents, just trying to score rhetorical points. And to somebody like me, it just pisses me off because I just want to have actual adults in charge of things who are competent. And Roe is not that bad a decision. First trimester, second trimester, third trimester makes a lot of sense, right? Most people who have financial or other types of reasons can usually figure their shit out within 2 trimesters.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that correlates actually not that badly with the beginning of organized brain function in the fetus. So see, we have a conversation like this, but apparently the people who run everything aren't capable of having a reasonable discussion. So if somebody came to me and said, no, my belief human life starts here, I'd say, well, I don't know what conversation we're supposed to have because you're coming at me with theology and I'm coming at you with science, and we're just talking in different languages. We're just going to have to politely agree to disagree.
Let me ask you this, Harry. That was decided in 1973.
Yep.
That was, 48 years ago, so almost half a century. In half a century, I would say that I would guess, I don't know this, but I would imagine that the fetal viability has probably advanced. I don't know what it was then, and I don't even know what it is now. But say that it has advanced from 7 months, a fetus is viable, to 6 months, a fetus is viable. Does that at all weigh on the on Roe, and should Roe get revisited on that basis?
No.
And why?
Well, because viability is the wrong standard. For instance,
you hear it thrown around a lot.
No,
that's
I hear.
That's why I want to get it discussed. That's why
I hear it thrown around a lot. Now, I'm not a radical on either side. I mean, I really am the squishy middle. You've got one of those rare centrist captive here talking to you. So, when the argument that's often made is that God is the greatest abortionist there is because an awful lot of fertilized eggs do not implant. right?
So he's a murderer.
Well, if you're going to make viability the standard, if technology gets to the point where any fertilized egg could be removed from the womb and placed in some sort of chamber and grown to, maturity, then you're essentially arguing that human life exists at the point where the potential for human life is possibly realized. And if that's the standard you're going to use, that's a very slippery slope. Because you're essentially saying that potential is equivalent to actual human life, whereas, like in that case, what do you do with the person who's on on life support who's filled out a DNR? Do you say that they're not allowed to commit suicide because the DNR doesn't recognize that technology might be able to do something for them?
That's a good point. Is DNR, does that make the nurse or the doctor who does not render that aid that they would otherwise render to someone who did not have that kind of an order written a murderer?
Yeah, you either have organized brainwaves indicative of human thought,
yeah,
or you don't. It's a much it's a much easier standard that you can't really work your way around so much.
Yeah.
And like I said, the whole potentiality thing, when you think about all of the fact that it's like a third of fertilized eggs don't implant, it's like, oh, well, the whole viability thing just doesn't seem like a very productive way to kind of look at it. Unless you're just trying to score rhetorical points, which people make that argument all the time for that reason.
Let me offer another thing, and this is perhaps a bit more of a practical aspect of it. How do you feel about having an extra 800 hang on, let me find out what was somebody find me the total number of abortions in the United States last year.
I'll take a look.
Thank you, Jude.
It was 600. Is it really that? Abortion surveillance. All right, that'll work. Do you really want to have some huge number? What this number that we're looking up? This number of unwanted children added to the country every year. So.
Well, that's a much harder question, because then we're saying it's expedient to not have these children go to term.
Yes.
And that is a much stickier situation, because I'm going to throw it back to you with an even more basic question, which is, how does a society decide what the value of a human life is? Because it's not the same at different points in history. And it's not just social differences. It's also sometimes when there's a lot of people hanging around and you've got a few extras, that doesn't seem quite so valuable.
Yeah.
Got a surplus population.
The value of a human life in China at the beginning of the 20th century was low. You could buy a human child for $8.
Mm-hmm.
That was the value of a human life, because there was a surplus of people there. And this is an important question, because it's not just the actuarial value in terms of what you would get from an insurance company if somebody gets killed on the job. Whenever we make these decisions about COVID and planning and everything else, buried underneath all of this discussion we're having is this concept of what is the value of a human life.
How does a society decide the value of a human life? Well, one of the things that you have to have a functioning society is a reasonable guarantee of individual safety and security, at least that the individual has to be able to have a chance at living a safe and secure life, reasonably safe from attack, where social sanctions will be levied on someone who attacks and stops other life. Murder has to be illegal. Otherwise, you simply have a bunch of jackals tearing each other to pieces. And eventually you get small groups of people who band together and essentially attack each other. There's little technologically technological development. It's just not a society that is equipped to compete with other societies that do have that basic respect for life. So, a basic respect for life, a protection of individual security and liberty, is essential to having a successful society. Uh, so, that's one of the things that tends to force a society to respect at some level the right of a person to be protected from external deleterious forces that could shorten its life. So, beyond that, a person, and this is something we've gotten so far away from, it almost sounds foreign, but the value of a life, of one life, is not equal to every other life. Okay? Albert Einstein was a more valuable life than Rashida Tlaib. That is an absolutely factual statement. His life contributed much more to society, to the understanding, the learning understanding of the world around us, and to the contributed more to the harmonious survival and thriving of society than Rashida Tlaib ever will. She's a divisive bringer of hatred. Sub optimization is her middle name. She does everything she can in pursuit of a short-sighted narrative that serves her purposes and nothing greater.
But you're also, by implication here, saying, depending on your metric, there are different calculi for the value of life.
No, it's the same calculus, but the values end up being different because the value of a life is defined by the type of life that is lived.
I think that has an external calculus attached to it.
Which is what?
I think it is what one considers productive and what one considers useful to a society.
Well, that's a little bit of the, it's hard to define that, but we know it when we see it.
Well, do we?
Money is sort of an indicator. It's not the only thing, obviously, because they're, somebody like Lizzo,
Yeah.
The performer, I guess that's probably the nicest term to use, performer.
Yes.
I don't see, I personally don't think there's any value in the art that this person produces. I'm not saying she's not human, because I don't say that about people very often. I reserve that for the really, really bad people. But the market seems to think that she's worth something. Society thinks that she's making some kind of
great example
contribution. So it may be an imperfect thing, but at least it gives you some notion. But
no, why is Megan Thee Stallion so much richer than Sarah Brightman?
But I think the question is equal protection under the law is a concept we have.
Yes.
But if we had a finite amount of money, if we decided we are going to spend 15% of GDP on healthcare, that would force us into a position where we had to make decisions about who got healthcare and who didn't. And
Yes.
I don't see that as reconcilable with equal protection under the law.
It isn't.
Well, what equal protection under the law doesn't mean everybody gets
equal access. It's not
E-
equity, but it's
it's you don't
But-
get equal anything.
but-
Really, what it means is you'll be equal protection under the law is as much equal protection from the law as it is anything else.
yeah, it's all in what it's applied to and how it depends. And I hate to be that vague, but there are people who think that equal protection actually applies to the government. It doesn't apply to private doings at all.
Well, the exact clause is no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws.
So I did find some statistics. It's kind of weird because I'm using World Population Review. It says abortions rates by state 2021, but then it has a note that says the abortion rate is the number of abortions per 1,000 women aged 15 to 44 years. Data is from 2017, so I'm assuming this is some kind of estimate that they're coming up with. But the total abortions that they predict is 856,730. Total births is about 3,845,940.
Okay.
And then total number of abortion clinics is 804.
I actually have the number of reported. I did get that, the number of reported abortions in the United States for 2017. That's the latest I got to. And that is 862,300.
Yeah. With 900,000, you get egg roll.
Yeah, if
know-
you use the CDC's description on negative drug interaction, which is where you get the clearest, very rare, the whole safe, legal, and rare. We went from very rare to teetering toward rare. So they haven't quite violated the safe, legal, and rare yet. But the sheer proportional volume to birth, percentage-wise, indicates a lack of rarity.
Well,
Yeah.
do you want a Fort Worth, Texas, full of unwanted children every year?
No,
Jenna does.
no, she doesn't.
I know.
I hope she's listening.
Wow.
But what I'm saying is safe, legal, and rare doesn't work anymore when you're dealing with those numbers.
No, clearly there are some people that are using it as birth control at that
Planned
point, and
Parenthood
that's
is
just
the worst
terrible.
named organization in the history of naming an organization. There's no money to be made in giving away birth control, but there is money to be made in doing abortions.
You get double points for double think. Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? There's money to be made in providing abortions. There's a higher fee attached than there is for handing out condoms. And they figured that out. And I find them a disgrace because of that. We have done a woefully poor job in explaining to people how it is you avoid getting pregnant or impregnating. And there are foolproof ways of guaranteeing that you don't get pregnant. Fucking foolproof. You have your plumbing removed. I mean, it's... And then there are things that have efficacy to such an extent that they do not explain that number of abortions. So people are not using birth control.
One of the things
They're
about
using
the
abortion
statistics-
as birth control.
Well, that's a great point, and then in support of that, one of the the rape and incest being listed as a reason for the abortion is far, far less than 1% of these abortions. 90+% of these abortions are no reason given, whatever that means.
It means, oops, I got caught. Oops, I got caught. Oops, I got caught. Oops, I got caught.
Yeah.
Now, look, I understand people getting caught up in the spontaneity in the moment and not wanting to put that condom on or
Spoil the mood.
insert, yes, spoils the mood and all that kind of stuff. But there used to be, and actions have consequences point of view, and that if you're going to
Not anymore.
engage in activity, of course not. It's living proof, the statistics we've cited. If you're going to engage in certain activities, I just wish people didn't celebrate abortion to the extent that they did. I can accept it as what I would call the necessary evil.
Mm-hmm.
Because to outlaw something completely is to cause misery, despair, death to people who did not deserve it. But we've done all the wrong things as a society if you're going to discuss the morality of treating life and the sanctity of life and any of those things. I mean, we've just simply done all the wrong things. We've rewarded all the wrong behaviors. We've encouraged a lack of respect and a lack of dignity toward one's body over and over again. There are women who are finding out in their 30s that they cannot have children because they had repeated abortions. Nobody told them that. They did not make it clear the risk going into this. And there is, with each abortion, there is minimal risk as long as you're going to a competent provider. Always skip anybody named Gosnell.
Yeah.
But there is, even with competent providers, risk of death.
Sure.
Even in an abortion. I think most people think that it's like going in and having cash put on their card at the bank. And it is for many people. It's basically a DNC, which swish bang, you're done. But
yeah, but even in
there
DNC,
is scarring that can occur.
And
with
there's
repeated
scarring
abortion,
that always occurs.
Yeah, it will
in
occur
DNC
because there was a
every
fetus
single time.
There was a fetus attached, and you frequently will see people have polyps later in life. But if you have more than one abortion, you are dramatically then decreasing your conception chances because you've scarred two reasonably good-sized areas on a rather small space. The uterus, when it's not stretched out to accommodate a fetus, is not very large. And those scars are much more significant than people are led to believe.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And now, let me, this is, since we're kind of playing situational, what would you do?
Mm-hmm.
How much in vitro fertilization treatment do you pay for on the taxpayer dime for somebody who had multiple abortions and has rendered their uterus difficult to implant? Not impossible to, but difficult.
Does that influence? Does their past activity influence their right to have access to taxpayer?
Well, with at-cause abortion, there's no way to ask the difficult questions. Was that due to incest or rape? Because then the individual is blameless. It's a tragic consequence.
Yeah, I don't think that you can.
You can't do anything.
Yeah, you can't base.
I mean, you can judge these people personally. You can judge them personally for being so foolhardy as to think that they were doing something that had no consequence down the road. And I think that's one of the things that is skipped in counseling. I don't think there really is any pre-abortion counseling anymore.
No, that would be a violation of somebody's civil rights, I'm sure. If I may, I would like to bring it back to the politics, though.
Yeah,
we're running out of time, and I
I did go
I'm sure
afield.
that nobody woke up this morning thinking, gosh, I wonder what Harry's position on abortion is. Nobody cares what my position on abortion
I
is.
care.
I
But
I
the
care.
point,
You're a thinking man, so of
well,
course
I
care.
try to at least be consistent and fair and honest about it. But I think my point is, I was just trying to bring myself up, not because my position's important, but because I think I'm a good representative of the squishy middle when it comes to this sort of stuff.
Yes.
You know, somebody who I would be very much on board with having some sort of law saying, well, we've got Roe versus Wade. You can't have an abortion in the third trimester without a medical reason or one of the following list of reasons that we can validate, right? If you came up with a law like that and the Republicans just said, this is where we draw the line, these, partial birth abortions or whatever they want to call them, third trimester abortions are just anathema to us and we're going to stop that. I don't think most people in the middle would view that as political suicide.
No.
I think when I woke up this morning, I was thinking, a few days ago, I was pretty much thinking 2022 is going to be a rout. And I'm not so sure anymore because the Democrats will make a real meal out of this. And a lot of the Afghanistan stuff is going to be forgotten, except by people who were never going to vote for Joe again anyway. Or whoever's sitting in Joe's seat in 2 years or 4 years. It's not going to matter. I think that the Republicans are being idiotic, and they're not really. They've just gotten full of themselves. It's like they're counting all their chickens before they've hatched, and they think they have political capital that they just don't have.
The biggest problem, in my opinion, is that I don't want to blame a specific group per se, but I am about to.
Go ahead.
It's the religious right.
It is.
They're the ones who keep tanking the Republican Party, in my opinion, and it's going to keep happening over and over and over again.
Texas Republicans have covered themselves in Southern Baptist glory and political shit.
Mm-hmm.
In one swell foop.
Yep.
It's gobsmacking. How unforced an error this is, but Skep has mentioned many times. The Southern Baptists in Texas, in particular, evangelicals, just generally speaking, have a good deal of sway in the South. They have a good deal of sway among Republicans, particularly in Texas, I'd say.
Yep.
They do in Tennessee too, and a couple other deep South states. And they cannot separate their religion from their politics.
Nope.
Their grandparents probably were quite concerned about Al Smith's religion, but not theirs. Theirs is fine, you see.
Well, it's like I was raised evangelical as well, and a lot of my family members are Southern Baptist, and it's like for them, it's a prerogative to have the two entwined. And it has done irreparable harm to religion, but they don't see it that way.
Nope.
But it has done irreparable harm to a religion. If you talk to people today who have deep bitterness toward organized religion and anger toward practicing Christians, some of the first things they're going to name are their political actions. They're not going to talk about their spiritual hypocrisies. They're going to speak about their politics. And I think people like Falwell and Pat Robertson, the Ernest Angeleys, these assholes who got involved in this stuff, did irreparable harm to fundamental Christianity in this country. It still is very strong because it is, very, very family centric and is very generational. And there's an awful lot of social pressure involved in it.
They have a lot of money. They're capable of gathering a lot of money. But it's an interesting thing. I actually got to meet a presidential candidate a few years ago and sit and talk with him for 10 or 15 minutes at a campaign fundraiser that I was a friend of someone with a lot of money, and so I got invited to. Actually, I had to wear a suit. Anyway, the guy's name was Sam Brownback, and he was a senator from Kansas. Brownback staked out the territory that he was the anti-abortion candidate. And in this rally, there were probably 800 people inside this palatial North Dallas estate home. They were absolutely worshipful of this guy. But the thing was, once he had that part nailed down, he never got any more any further support. And that's what that group does, is it peels away about 15% of the southern Republican oriented conservative part of the electorate, and doesn't go any farther than that. And too many of the other people look at a guy like Brownback, who is just, no abortion ever. If a woman dies, they die. No rape, no incest.
God's will.
God's will. Let God. The end times are coming, and he's a true believer. He really believes this. I mean, I talked with him, and him and his wife, and they're nice people, but it's kind of eerie being around them, because it's like being with a Mooney or a Scientologist who's really into it. He's completely given over to that, and that weirds out too much of the rest of the conservative electorate. So it is, as you point out, maybe it was Harry pointed out, the Republicans do this to themselves. They just get a portion of them who absolutely will not budge on this thing and believe it's God whispering in their ear, and they manage to doom themselves. And that's one of the things that dooms the Republicans. And I agree with Harry. I think they're going to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. I don't know that there are a lot of things working in the Republicans' favor this time. I mean, it's always good for, almost always good for the party that's out of power to have a chance to really, bring change. Have a snap back from the election that they lost 2 years previously. But given the fact that, let's face it, the Democrats control a lot of the mechanics of voting, shall we say, without saying anything that's going to get the channel in trouble. And between that and the fact that the Republicans have just, they give themselves over to these extremist positions that feel better, that give them a good feel-good fix, and are not practical or pragmatic from the standpoint of attracting a broader swath of the electorate to where they can actually make some electoral progress.
Well, you'll hear them say things like, I can't let my morality be determined by politics. And that's all well and good. That is all well and good, and I applaud that position. Please don't go into politics then. Go into the priesthood.
Politics is about compromise.
Yes. I mean, but go into the priesthood if that's your attitude. Yeah. Take the pulpit. Take up the calling, put on the robes, and go at it. That is a perfectly acceptable point of view for a minister, to not allow politics to influence their morality. And it's a perfectly fine and position for any citizen to take.
Or a policeman.
But we're talking about politics here. We're not talking about morality. Yeah. The idea that you would be speaking of morality and politics in the same breath, which I just did, is ludicrous. Because politics is, I'm not saying it is I'm not saying it's immoral. but it's pretty much amoral. They'd like to claim that they're full of moral certitudes and this, that, and the other, and we like to ascribe that kind of stuff to them. But we just simply want them to keep the lights on and the roads going and the general welfare looked after and the national defense taken care of. I don't give a shit where they go to church. I don't care who they fuck, and I don't care what their internal organs look like, what gender they are. And I just wish people could keep a certain degree of separation between them. And when it comes to deeply, deeply conservative people, many of them, and I can understand where they get this drive, put their Christianity above their politics, but they get involved in politics. And I'm like, what, did you skip that bit of Jesus's advice about Caesar?
Rendering thereunto that which
Yeah.
belongs to Caesar. No.
Yeah. I mean, it's they make
Of course,
very
he was
bad
kind of
mix.
he's kind of giving tax advice there, but
Of course he was, but it is applicable. I think it's applicable because you're dealing with the state.
Yeah.
And
Not to mention,
what's the
not to
business of
mention-
the state but politics?
yeah. Well, not to mention also that's the way the United States was originally founded and constructed. Those two entities were intended to be separate.
They were intended to walk hand in hand, actually. If you read the Establishment Clause, there is nothing establishing them as separate. Unfortunately, a letter was written by Jefferson that used the phrase the separation of church and state. But you're right.
it was a response. to a
Basically, it
minister.
was it was a response to a church that was quite concerned that tithing might come back.
Yeah.
And that there would be a state established church. And that's what the Establishment Clause clearly lays out will not occur. But they needed reassurance, and he used that phrase. And as a result, a large number of people say, hey, we have separation of church and state. Yeah, it's not in the Constitution. People were supposed to be able to freely practice their religion in the public square. We've seen
It's funny to think of Jefferson sitting there thinking, should I use a term that's strong or not? That probably won't make any difference in the history. I'll go with it.
yeah, and you have a large group of people that have probably spent time going through the Constitution, positively swear that it's in there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not, and it is a difficult thing to try to explain this pluralism to people.
Harry, you sound like there's an idea trying to get out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, there is not enough time to discuss the idea that was in my head in terms of the public square, because it's just that the balance to that is, in terms of the state establishing a religion, we don't want it putting its finger on the scale toward any particular religion.
Right.
So the public square is fine. You can practice religion, but you don't necessarily expect to use facilities at the school at no cost, and let one religion do it and not another.
Right.
This is where the law gets a little sticky. There's nothing about the government that it should be stopping religions from being formed. Now, if we had doomsday cults like they have in Japan, we could talk about that discussion because there are limits to everything. Because I know that you're not big on utilitarianism, but at a certain point, the means and the ends do become important. And it's always easy to talk about the middle with stuff like this, but there are extremes where things might be different, right? In terms of religions. But I think for the most part, I probably agree with Prospero on about 95% of this stuff. I'm really good at thinking up shitty examples of the extremes.
Oh, there are, and that's the problem. Anytime I talk about this, I think, oh Christ, then there's this, because they're people will take just magnificent freedom and fuck it right into the ground.
And it was because I had an
Yeah.
Hello?
Hi.
You came in with an entire conversation going on behind you.
Yes, and we're kind of wrapping up now. So I've just got you muted just for a second, so that we can finish the thought here.
Yeah, well, I've got my final thought ready. Just let me know.
I was going to say it's time to send it around for final thoughts. Jenna's more quiet now, and so I will start with Geodes. Final thoughts, bud.
I've been kind of testing out a couple of other platforms. Just in case at any point we have to migrate or something, and I like Odyssey, so just throwing it out there.
All right, excellent. How modern?
Okay.
Prospero.
Keep the powder dry.
Yeah, always good advice. What you got, Harry?
Well, I was reminded of something from my past. I was 20 years old, I believe, maybe 19, and I was an assistant manager at a small restaurant. And it was fun because I would do things like go out and buy cases of champagne, like 10, 20 cases of champagne, and nobody checks your ID when you're buying that much alcohol, and you're a mature person. But anyway, I had this one guy who I did not hire, who was working there, and he was much more interested in reading his Bible than he was in doing the work that I needed done.
Oh boy!
And I went around a corner and I caught him sitting behind a counter down low with his Bible reading, and kind of talking, kind of like reading it out loud, but just not making a lot of noise. He was very, very excited about it. And I just looked at the guy and said, that part in there about rendering unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. As far as you're concerned, I'm Caesar. And I'm gonna get a proper day's work out of you, or you're just not coming back. We had a little discussion about that, and it was like, okay. He turned out to be okay after that little conversation, but
he saw the light.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where you're thinking, let's see, should I go there? No. Yeah, why not?
Gotcha.
That's great.
I love that.
I heartily approve.
Jenna, do you have anything? We're about to sign off the broadcast, but I didn't want you to feel left out. If you have something that you want to interject into this,
I'm sorry, I didn't realize I wasn't muted when I came in.
No, yeah, you have nothing to be sorry for. You doing okay?
I'm alive.
Yeah, that's a good thing. All right, well, I'll finish it up with this and. First of all, say thank you to the people who come out and listen to us chat. Thank you for being a part of this. We appreciate the commentary and your attention. We do this for you. And thank you to my panel, my wonderful friends who come and hang with me for a couple of hours once a week. It's wonderful to be with you. It really means the world to me. Kind of finish it off with a quote from an author I really enjoy, a guy named Jim Butcher. He says, "You think your power is what shapes the world you walk in, but that is an illusion. Your choices shape your world. You think your power will protect you from the consequences of those choices, but you are wrong. You create your own rewards. There is a judge, there is justice in this world, and one day you will receive what you have earned. Choose carefully." Our choices are really all we have in this world. And he's right. Choose carefully. Anyway, thanks for being with us this evening. And for Tuesday, the zoo is closed. Good night, everybody.